Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session with the New York State Teachers Retirement System. My name is Yalitza Negron Rivera. I serve as the Talent Acquisition Sourcing Lead for the organization and very excited to have you all joining us here today. So we're going to be starting here shortly. We have about a good maybe couple minutes left. So hopefully if you have some lunch with you or something to drink or snack on, we are very comfortable. We want you to take care of yourself, so feel free to do so. And I'm also joined here with my colleague, Christine DePierno, who serves as one of our colleagues here in HR. And she's very knowledgeable about the civil service process and system, and she's been with us for quite some time. So she'll also be helping to share some great information with all of you today. So we'll give folks a couple more minutes. It'll be a little quiet for a bit. Love to see some faces. I know it's common. Folks might be busy, so you might have your cameras off. But if you're able to have your camera on, love to connect with you that way too. Also, questions can be streamlined through the chat, or if we're an intimate group today, you can also use the raise your hand function on Zoom, and we're happy to prioritize you because it'll kind of move you up in priority order on our screen so we can see if you have a question. But like I said, give us a few minutes while folks are continuing to log on, and I'll do another round of introduction shortly since I know we're being recorded for folks, and we'll go from there. So we'll be back in a few seconds. Thanks, everybody.
Yulitza, can you hear me? Okay,
Yep, I can hear you fine.
good.
Yeah, you're good. And I have the PowerPoint up on my side, so very similar to the last time. We'll just facilitate that way, and you can cue me and I'll just transition the slides for us. All right, so while we're getting ready to start, I thought it'd be great. Just a little housekeeping things too. I don't know about some of you all, but I'm really used to having closed captioning on when I'm watching any webinars, just because, like most folks, people are prioritizing and doing other things. So just want to remind folks as part of the availability, just to make sure you can access it. There is a closed captioning option at the bottom of your screen. So if you hover your cursor down to the bottom where it has a little box with 2 C's in it, you can click that. And if you're in a space that you can't have sound on, but you can read what we're saying, hopefully the AI is pretty intuitive and you can actually see what we're saying. Sometimes it might be funny if we pronounce something, it'll pick something else, but I hope it's intuitive and it's worked out pretty well. So feel free to turn that on. While we're waiting for folks to log on and to officially start, it'd be great to know who's in our virtual room today. So if in the chat, you could quickly just kind of introduce yourself to everyone, give us your name, what academic major you're currently studying, and maybe a question that you have coming into today that might help Christine and I tailor our time together would be awesome. In the chat, you can easily access down again in that main home screen. You hover your cursor down at the bottom, there's a box that says chat. So you're welcome to put your questions in there, would be great. And like I told folks, we'll be sharing our screen shortly. We do have slides to guide our conversation today. So happy to have you join us. So thank you so much for being here. If you can hear my fast typing, I know I'm unmuted.
I cannot even hear you typing.
Really? It's that okay, good.
Nope, I can't even tell.
I felt like in another virtual space, we were interviewing a candidate and I didn't realize how heavy my fingers are on the keys. And one of my colleagues was like, "Hey, you know that you type pretty loud," but it wasn't a bad thing. And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Oh shoot, I should be mindful of that." Oh, good to know. That's kind of funny. They felt it was distracting, but I was like, I never really thought if it's distracting or not.
I cannot even hear it, so
That's pretty cool. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I know I saw a few more names pop up on our screen, so good to have you all here today. We only have about a minute before we formally start, so I figured I'll do again another round of housekeeping before we get it off and running because I see all the cells popping up. So this is awesome. For folks who are just joining us, we'd love to know who's in our virtual space today. So if you could take a minute and just quickly introduce yourself in the chat, give your name, your major, and a question that you have coming into today would be awesome because then Christine and I can really take the time to tailor a little bit of our session here today. I know that we're slated to go until 1:30, and I know that's a really long amount of time for a virtual event. So we're going to move through our slides, not in a rushed way, but going through the content. And we really want to make this as useful to you as possible. So please feel free to make the most of today's session with us. Whether you want to ask a specific question about the content we shared, maybe there's questions about our own career paths that you're really interested in. Both of us are both on the recruiting side of our organization. So maybe there's questions you've always wanted to ask a recruiter about or anything around that. We'd be happy to share some of our own thoughts and insight as much as possible. Also, if you have the ability to actually share or actually turn your cameras on, we'd love to see you, but I know sometimes folks are in spaces that may not allow for that. So I completely understand, but this would be a great way to associate names with faces. And as well, if you need the closed captioning option because you're in a space that perhaps you can read the information, but you can't have sound on, there is the option to do that in the main bar of Zoom. So feel free to hover over that, press the CC. The AI has gotten more intuitive over time, so you should be able to read what we're saying, which is super helpful. All right, so I see some great dialogue happening in the chat. Good. My goal is to get into the business program at Queens College currently. Fall time taking courses required. Great. Currently majoring quantitative econ and plan on entering consulting or asset management. Wonderful. Oh, great. I'm starting to see some class years too. I'm a senior undergraduate student majoring in econ at Queens. Awesome. And majoring in accounting. My goal is to take advantage of every opportunity offered. Great. Yes. And for folks who didn't share what academic year, if you'd like to also put that in the chat, it's great to get a sense of who's in the room. It's totally fine by us if we have a lot of folks who are undergrad, grad, or somewhere in between. I mean, all are certainly welcome, which is really great. Great. Marilyn, nice to meet you. Thank you. I know everybody's popping up in the chat. This is great. Awesome. We're going to keep the chat up just so we don't lose track of connecting with people. Senior undergrad, sociology, wonderful. I'm just wondering the next step is after I graduate. Great. So let me share a little bit. We're going to make the most of our time together, and I'm happy to read this as well. Ooh, yay. I think it's Shayna, psych major. I'm a psych alum, so great to meet you too. I'm not biased at all, but really excited. That's really great. All right, y'all. So we're going to get started because, like I said, we have quite a bit of content to share, but again, we want to make this most useful to all of you. So we'll do a quick round of introductions of ourselves. My name is Yalitza Negron Rivera. I serve as the talent acquisition sourcing lead for the New York State Teachers Retirement System. Really happy to join you on a Monday morning. And thank you so much for the active participation in the chat today, but also taking the time to join us during your lunch hour. Today's session is really going to give you an opportunity to learn some valuable information about public service and how to potentially consider a career path in public service. And also, we're going to take some time to talk about our our organization and how we fit as part of this larger piece of civil service process, non-civil service positions, just kind of helping to understand where do we fit with New York State, and then give you a sense of some employment opportunities that might be of interest to you. Christine and I have been doing this work in varying capacities. I actually come from the field of higher education, specifically career services. So working with college students, both at undergrad and graduate level, is definitely a strength of mine in my role. So I'm excited to partner with your school and get to connect with you a bit more. But I'm going to take a pause. Christine, could you take some time to share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the group?
Whoops. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Like Yulitsa said, I work with her at Teachers in the recruitment area. I have been working in human resources for a very long time, and mostly in environments that utilize the civil service process for hiring people. So I'm happy to be able to share a lot of that knowledge with you today. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I've done pretty much everything in human resources from recruitment to benefits administration. So I'm also happy to answer any questions if anyone's interested in human resources and they have some specific questions about that. We're happy to field those as well.
And I was going to say after our presentation as well, if folks want to continue the conversation and really tailor it to you specifically as a candidate, we can do that as well and schedule times to meet with you. Actually, already met with two prospective candidates this morning that are students from area schools. And also this afternoon after this session, I'll be meeting with folks. So not uncommon and a great use of time. So we're happy to continue chatting with each other. So, all right. So for today's session, I'm actually going to share my screen. And again, feel free to keep the energy up in our chat box. That way we can continue to address this and customize it. So our session today is really going to be focusing on hearing a little bit more about the civil service process, more about demystifying this career path. I'll be honest with you, and I'll go from the beginning of the slides. Going into public service wasn't necessarily an area that I had really thought of for a career, especially being a psych major and a minor in criminal justice. And I really fell into service through AmeriCorps Vista as a federal volunteer. So considering a career in New York State, I actually fell into New York State again, but through career services of the public state university in the area. So having learned about it and doing career services for folks who were interested in going into a career in public service was new for me, and being able to help guide folks. And there's a lot of great information to know about the benefits of considering this as an option for folks, especially if you've really considered private sector as your main employer of choice, but knowing that this is an option too. So today's session is really going to help to demystify it a bit, and hopefully you walk away with some key insights on how to make this a viable career option for you. So we've already done some introduction. We both are in LinkedIn as well. And I'm also on Handshake, which is commonly used by a lot of the colleges in the area. So you're welcome to always send me a note on either of those platforms, and I'm happy to touch base with you all there too. So as we're looking at talking about, and I think this is important to know, we know that a lot of folks who are on the job market, especially the early career professionals, are really looking for some key info factors in their search. Whether you're looking for some job stability, maybe perhaps you're looking for employers that have opportunity for growth and mobility in their organization so that you can actually get to dabble in a little bit of everything. Maybe mental health and finding some support there is important to you, and being able to carve out resources and time to take care of that part of your life is important. And I know for some students, whether you're an undergrad or graduate student, some folks are still considering, how am I going to pay my student loans, or how I'm going to pursue further education, and finding an employer that can do that is critical. And also the idea of financial well-being and how does an employer help to support you on that are some of the many factors that students are looking at as they're vetting out employers. And last but not least, and certainly this isn't everything, I'm sure, but considering, what does a geographic location have to offer where an employer is located? Or perhaps are there even paid internships that you could consider, or maybe unique perks or benefits that perhaps make joining that community even more appealing. And also getting some transparency on what employees can learn and actually become as part of joining that organization. We know that many of the folks who are searching early in their career are very community oriented in the sense that they really look at not only am I going to be compensated well, but actually what is the community that I'm joining and what are the benefits of this. And honestly, our organization actually prides itself on many of these areas, which we'll cover later. But honestly, just zooming us out to public service also helps to target a lot of this as well. So I'm excited to share more about this with you. And actually, Christine is going to be the first one to jump in, and we're going to talk about just demystifying employment at our organization, but most importantly, looking at a lens of New York State service and what are some key information that you need to know. So Christine, you're welcome to jump in.
Thanks, Yulitsa. So yeah, we're going to talk about public service. When we say public service uses what's called the civil service system in order to recruit for most of its jobs. And the slides are going to go over a little bit about this, but before I get started, I just want to say civil service, and Yulitsa alluded to this a little bit. There's civil service at the state level, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. But there's also civil service at the city level, at the municipality level. School districts use civil service to hire for their non-teaching positions. So I want you to know that there's lots of opportunity in public service on all different levels, including the federal government. And they all use their own processes and systems for hiring. But we're going to focus on the state system. If anyone has any questions about some of the other types of employment in civil service, I can certainly try to answer those. I do have some experience at the municipality, school district, and county levels. Okay, so we can move to the next slide. So civil service breaks up their jobs into classifications. And the 4 types of classifications that civil service uses is the competitive class. Those are jobs that are filled by a competitive examination. And those who sit for the examination go on a list and are ranked. And we use those lists to fill the positions in that class. Non-competitive are positions that are there's no examination required, but you do need to meet the required qualifications or characteristics of the job. We refer to those as the minimum qualifications. So when you see jobs that are listed as non-competitive, look at the minimum qualifications and see if you meet those. If you do, you can go ahead and apply because you're eligible to be considered. Labor class, those are specific skills or educational requirements of those jobs. An example of a job that would be in the labor class would be a cleaner or a tradesperson. An exempt class, we're not going to really speak too much about exempt. We don't actually have any exempt class positions at teachers, but they are typically positions that are filled when they're closely related to confidential or policy influencing.
There we go.
Thank you, Yulitsa.
Mhm.
So at NYSTRS, we have positions in our workforce that are not civil service. Those are management positions or confidential positions. Yulitsa and I work in confidential positions, but pretty much all the other positions in our organization are civil service positions, and they are broken up by competitive and non-competitive in labor. So you can see 83% of our civil service workforce are competitive positions, which means we have to use lists that are created when people sit for exams. And then non-competitive labor makes up about 70% of our workforce. And those are positions where people are eligible to apply based on meeting the minimum qualifications. An example of a title at NYSTRS that would be non-competitive would be our investment officers, our TRS investment officer series. Those are all non-competitive positions, so people are eligible to apply if they meet the minimum qualifications. An example of a competitive position within our organization would be a senior accountant. There is a test that you sit for to take that, and when we are ready to hire or fill a position that's vacant for a senior accountant, we must use the civil service list.
And I will just jump in really quick because Christine's going to go much more in depth about this. But when you hear test, we're going to really clarify what that means. Because I know for students, and especially I know me, when I was in college, anytime I heard a test, I'd get all anxious and be like, oh my God, I'm going to have to study for this. And how am I going to produce? And what does this mean? So we'll help you to gain an understanding of that shortly.
So New York State Competitive Service. So we spoke a little bit about the competitive examinations. What are those examinations? So they, for years back, they were exams that you would go and you would sit and you would answer a series of questions. A lot of times those questions were not related to the job itself. They were more measuring your knowledge, your skills, and abilities. So say like your ability to create a cohesive paragraph, or if it was a position where there was some computation that was associated with that position, there might be a series of questions related to figuring out various types of computations. Civil service has realized that that's not always the best way to test for someone's ability to be able to do a job, and they have started changing the exam process for competitive examinations and moving towards more of a questionnaire that people answer about their knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. And so you're ranked through that process. The PCO exam, which is the the Professional Career Opportunities exam, which those with a bachelor's degree are eligible to sit for. That used to be a written exam where you answered questions that civil service designed for that test. That test is no longer in that format. You now answer a questionnaire about your skills and abilities, and you are given a score based on that, and you are put on the list in that manner. The types of examinations, so in public service and in civil service, if you're in a competitive title, an examination is given at every level. So an open competitive examination would be an examination that you would take to enter service. So that would be an entry level exam. And those are exams that are open to the public as long as you meet the minimum qualifications. Once you're in state service or a civil service position, in order to move around to other titles or to be promoted upward, you sit for additional examination. So a promotion exam would be an exam you would sit for to move up a level in your title series. And a transitional exam would be an exam that you would sit for to move out of your title series into another title series that would give you additional opportunities. Since we're talking about the state, it would be in the state here. Continuous recruitment are exams that you that they're basically applications. You fill out an application and you submit it for consideration. As long as you meet the minimum qualifications, you're eligible for consideration. An example of that type of examination would be our actuary series. Those are just a application process.
Mhm.
And Lisa, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking of one other piece, just for folks, if you're hearing like the word title series and trying to understand like what does this look like, we don't have a screenshot of it, but it made me think for the future when we do this training, I'd like to show folks. If you see the source on the slide, it says the Career Mobility Office. It's an office in the Department of Civil Service. Think of like the HR for New York State. This is a really great resource for you to go to. And if you want to schedule some time to talk about it offline and get like to walk through and navigate it, happy to. But this is a resource that allows you to look up different title of jobs in New York State and actually see what those jobs can lead to as you take promotional exams, perhaps, or what could you progress to in the role over time. So hopefully that's making sense for folks. But if you type in Career Mobility Office in Google, it'll come up. And just a thought there. Christine, I did see a question in the chat, and I did mention to them we were going to get to this, but I thought it was worth bringing it up. I think it's Janae, but I think it could be Janae. But great question. What happens when there are several candidates with same scores, and how long will it take me to be selected off the list? And I know we're going to get to that in a second, could be the next slide, but I didn't know if you wanted to take a second to answer that.
Sure. So there is a slide that talks about this. It's hard to say how long, first of all, someone would stay on a list because that really depends how many positions are being recruited for and how often the list is being used and people are being hired off the list. So sometimes you can take an exam and you might sit on the list for several years, or sometimes you might be on it for several months. Your score is also a factor. So obviously, the higher you score on an exam, the higher up you're going to be on the list. The lower you score on an exam, the harder it's going to be to reach you. For example, the Professional Career Opportunities exam, many people take that exam. And so there are hundreds and hundreds of people at the score of 100. You're always eligible to apply, whether you receive a Canvas letter or not. And it's civil service. When we are using a list, we have to use that list and decide who's reachable based on what's called the score of 3. So, and it's not how you score when you take the exam, it's who applied for the job and what do those scores look like. So, for example, if 3 people apply to a recruitment and everyone has a score of 100, you're actually tied at the score of 100. You actually can't consider anyone else below 100. So it's what's the first score, what's the second score, what's the third score, and then everyone who's tied with the third score you can consider. So I think it'll be clearer when we get to the other slide to kind of see it on paper.
Yeah. And I think the only other question I can help answer this one, although Christine, you might also have answers to this too. If you paid for an examination in the past, but never sat for it, essentially, can the funds be transferred to another test? One only thought I have for you is just to know that, and if I'm right here, Christine, Governor Hochul has waived examination fees for right now, correct?
That is
To help
correct.
people have access. And I apologize if we could maybe look this up as a follow-up information. I don't know if there's an expiration to that. I think it's for the next budget year, perhaps, but it is trying to remove an obstacle for folks who otherwise couldn't afford the examination fees. Do you know anything about the transfer of funds? My gut is probably saying that's not possible, but again, I wouldn't truly know.
I don't believe that's possible. I believe it says on the exam announcement that the when they were charging a fee for the exams, that the fee's not refundable.
Okay. So if you do schedule to take an exam and for whatever reason you can't make it, just know it's probably one of those kind of, you kind of eat a little bit at the expense. But I think on a positive note, knowing that this, what some people may consider as a burden for them to pay for this has been lifted. So if you're find a test that you meet the criteria for and would like to take it, by all means, please do. And I'll move to the next slide because I have a feeling the next one would say, um, the next piece. So hold on. No, we're getting close to it though. All
Thanks,
right.
Lisa.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit more about examinations. So they can be periodic or continuous recruitment. We spoke about that, about examinations that are continuous. Sometimes those are very difficult to fill positions because they have a lot of turnover. So they've made those positions continuous recruitment so they can always be receiving applications and reviewing them and filling positions. And then there are those jobs that are periodic, which means they give the exam when they deem it's necessary to give the exam. That might be because the current list is getting weak and they need to give another exam so that they can refresh it. Or it can just be like the Professional Career Opportunities exam, where they try to give that regularly, maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years. So it's important to be aware of all the exams that are being given and what the deadlines are for application. And I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit, but if you look down at the bottom, that link takes you to the New York State Exam Announcements Board, where you can see all of the examinations that are upcoming. And there's also a link on there where you can sign up to receive an email announcement when the state posts new exams. So Yulitsa and I suggest that everybody who's interested in a possible career in public service sign up for that, so you can start to get familiar with the types of exams that are given and what the minimum qualifications are for those exams. Like we said before, exam compositions can vary. Sometimes they're written, sometimes they're multiple choice, sometimes they're a questionnaire. You just have to look at the exam announcement to see what the questions look like or what type of exam is going to be given. The scores from an exam are typically posted within 90 to 120 days, and that's when a new list is issued on what we call ELMS, which is the Eligible List Management System. And that's where we go to pull either current or new list to use them to canvass for positions that we might have vacant.
Great. And I know I see another specific question, which we'll get to in a second, but let's see if the next one talks about, yep, the rule of three. Perfect.
Okay. So we call a list an eligible list. It's the list, then we use the term canvas, which basically means, oh, we're going to send out a notice to a certain number of people on the list, letting them know that we are looking to fill a position in a specific title. And when people receive those canvas, they send them back to us and let us know either they're interested or they're not interested at this time. And based on all the responses that we get, we determine what our applicant pool looks like. And then we give everyone their score as it is listed on the list that we got off of ELMS. So when we determine who we can actually consider for the position, who's reachable, we call that who's reachable on the list, we have to use what's called the rule of three. So from this example, you could see Mary got 100, 3 other people got a 95, and Mike got a 90. So with the rule of three, Mary is number 1, Bill is number 2 with a 95, Juan is number 3 with a 95, and then anyone who has a score of a 95 can be considered. In this example, Mike, who got a 90, is not eligible to be considered at this time. His score is not reachable in this example. So types of employment at NYSTRS. So traineeships and internships are actually not part of civil service. I'm sorry, traineeships are part of civil service, but the internships and the fellowships are not part of civil service, and they are listed on this slide, but Yulitsa's gonna take a deeper dive into those, the internships and the fellowships, and I'll let her speak to more of that, but I'll just explain the traineeships a little bit. So traineeships are positions that exist throughout state employment, and they are also at NYSTRS. They are opportunities for individuals who meet the minimum qualifications to enter state employment and then learn a particular job over either a 1-year period or a 2-year period, working their way to typically a grade 18. So it's a great way to learn a job and then work your way up to what they call it an entry level, which is a grade 18. Once you sit in a grade 18 for a period of a year, you're eligible for promotional opportunities throughout the state. Traineeships also make you eligible to move from one job to another job if that title is eligible for transfer to another title. So traineeships are a great opportunity. Most of them are filled through the Professional Career Opportunities exam. So that is a really good exam to take if you have a bachelor's degree so that you can be on the list and be considered for traineeship opportunities.
And just an overall note, if you haven't heard or starting to think about this, taking these exams as they become available is important. I've heard this from other folks who sat for these exams. The more you get familiar with them, the better it will be for you to continue to respond better to questions and become more familiar, more confident, just like you would with any other test taking scenario as well. Same applies here. And also knowing that some exams are not offered annually. Sometimes they are every 2 to 3 years, just like what Christine was saying. So you want to make sure that you are signing up off of that link and receiving notifications in your preferred email, because that way you don't miss an opportunity to sit for an exam. And then depending, I know a thought came in here, I think it's Annette who just joined us, brought up that she had taken an exam, but she hadn't heard anything yet. She knew her score, she knew where she fell in ranking, but she hadn't heard anything. And there's a lot of factors that could impact that. How many, like Christine said, how many people are being hired for that title? Are they still waiting to hear responses from people who were initially canvassed for that role? So it is important to continue to take these exams over and over and just have the confidence, okay, I either am on a list or I'm waiting to hear back. And as positions become available, they will seek that list out. But I think it's good to know that there's a lot of factors that go into just looking at a list, and just making sure that you're aware about that, because sometimes it can take some time to get into a state position. But once you've secured one and are able to secure it and move forward and accept it, and it's a great fit, you can see why it could actually be really beneficial to you. So just knowing about this process can really help empower you. Oh, and
Absolutely.
here we
Yeah,
go.
absolutely. For example, the first time I took a civil service exam, which is a long time ago, I actually sat on that list for almost 4 years before I got called for an interview. And when I did get called for an interview, though, it was an opportunity. I was on the list, I could be considered, and I actually was successful and received that job. So if I hadn't sat for the exam a few years earlier, I would never have had the opportunity to be considered. So it's taking civil service exams is about making sure you're available should an opportunity become present. And if you're not on the list, you can't be considered. So that's why it's important to take an exam. And sometimes it can take a little while. They don't fill, just because they give an exam doesn't mean there's opportunities out there immediately. It could just be that it's time for them to give that exam. And so they're giving the exam. So don't be alarmed if you don't hear anything for a while.
And I do see one question before you jump in, Christine. Is there any way to prepare for or study for an exam? So what would you suggest?
So there are some study guides on the New York State Civil Service exam site. I would say some of the exams are hard to study for because they're not directly related to a position, but they're more related to like comprehension. Like, what is your level of comprehension? What is your ability to write a coherent paragraph? Um, Depending on the type of exam that you're going to take, the questions could be different. I do agree with something that Yulita said a little bit earlier. Even when I was in school pursuing my bachelor's degree, every semester when I was in a new class, it kind of took me one or two tests with a new professor to understand how do they give an exam. And then once I kind of understood that, I knew what to expect on upcoming exams. The more you take civil service exams, the better you get at understanding what the style is, what's being requested of you, and you get more comfortable with the questions. So I would say, you know, just having basic skills that you're acquiring in college is going to help you be successful on civil service exams. I don't think I never studied for any civil service exam that I took, and I took many of them. Um, Most I did really well on, and some I didn't do so well on because of the type of questions that they had. So I would encourage people to just to sit for them and get some experience.
Mhm. Great. Let me go
Okay.
slide. Do you want me to switch slides?
I don't think I talked about this one.
Oh, sure.
I'll just review this one very quick. So these are examples of competitive traineeship titles at NYSTRS. So the Professional Career Opportunities exam is actually split into two separate lists. There's a list for generalist job titles and a list for select job titles. Generalist job titles typically require that you just have a bachelor's degree. And so you can see some of the titles that we have listed there that we use off that list. And then the select job titles typically require that you have more specific type of education. So for example, the senior accountant and the auditor one require that you have 24 semester credit hours in accounting, auditing, or taxation in order to be eligible to be appointed to those titles. So you also need a bachelor's degree, but you need those extra credits as well. So Yulitsa was talking a little bit about this before. What's a title series? So the Teacher's Retirement Examiner 1 is actually what we would consider a title series. So Teacher's Retirement Examiner 1 is the entry-level title for that title series. It's a grade 12. Once you're in that title, for a period of 3 months, you're eligible to sit for any promotional examinations that are given. And once you're in the title for a year, you're eligible to be appointed to promotional titles. So a promotional title in this title series would be a Teacher's Retirement Examiner 2, 3, and 4. A grade 2 is a 2 is a grade 15, a 3 is a grade 18, and a Teacher's Retirement Examiner 4 is a grade 23. So you could see right there, there's a lot of opportunity. You might start at a grade 12, but you could advance all the way up to a grade 23, which I would say is a higher level supervisory grade in the state. And then the office assistant 1, that's a grade 6. That is an entry level title. Every agency within the state uses that title. And it also has a title series of Office Assistant 2 and 3. But that is a great way that people enter state service. And we know many people who entered a state service as a grade 6 and are now in management positions. So it's a great way to just get your foot in the door and then advance through the ranks.
And we'll talk about this in a little bit because we even have physicians here at our organization that do recruit from the grade 6. We do select people from that. And there's a lot of great ways to go into a position like this, even that's not your intention to do that type of work forever, but what benefits and perks you can access that can even support you in the long run with like tuition reimbursement access and things like that. So we'll make sure to touch base in on that.
So the next couple of slides are just slides about the different types of titles that we have within our departments. So you can just see, for example, we have an actuary department, and those are the various titles within the actuary department, starting with the actuary trainee position and going all the way up to a principal actuary. And then our finance department, we use senior and associate accountants, contract management specialist, accountant aides. Our investment divisions, which are our 4 asset classes, we use our TRS investment officer titles. They start at a traineeship of a grade 14 and go all the way up to a grade 27.
Yep.
And then again, that's just another slide going over some more of our areas and the different types of titles that we use. You can see in our communications and outreach department that we have a public information specialist 1. That's a competitive title, but then we also have a graphic designer, and that's a non-competitive title. Our member relations division is our customer service division. The people who work in that division are servicing our members, which are our school districts, our retirees, our active teachers. And you can see we have various titles in that division.
And I think one piece to hopefully take away is, and you're seeing all of these titles and you're getting really familiar with this whole concept of state service. If you ever have a question and say, I'm not sure if I'm eligible, if I'm interpreting this correctly, please reach out to myself, to Christine, also on position descriptions and any opportunities through New York State. They typically have a person who serves as the point person who's hiring for that position that you can also send an email to or even call and with your questions. So please feel free to do that, because before you put the time and effort into an application, it may be worth just understanding if in fact you meet the qualifications for it. And I'll jump into this slide because really what we wanted you to all take away is there are many other pathways within our organization that at first the name, it may seem a bit deceiving. Sometimes folks are like, oh, you hire teachers. Or if they find out about the pension fund, they're like, oh, you really hire more from like the finance, maybe economics, maybe more accounting background. But we actually have various different departments in our organization, everything from our legal department to even HR, where we are in, to even our DEI office that folks may not realize might be a viable opportunity for them in their career. So this is like a perfect transition for us to just start to talk about NYSTRS and really demystify ourselves as an employer as part of the public service workforce. So who is the New York State Teachers Retirement System? So our organization is the organization who provides the pension or the retirement payment benefits to retired New York State teachers and administrators in New York State. We don't represent the teachers that are in New York City because actually in New York City has their own pension fund, but we're the ones that represent folks outside of that. We have a very rich history. We're 102 years old, and we have a very active mission and vision. And you're going to see this shortly through some recent photos of our organization. But we're very values driven. And you see our values up on your screen, but we actually live them on a day-to-day, whether we're doing it through our employee recognition programs, whether we're displaying it in our own work or through our vetting process when we're recruiting interns, or even through our full-time and part-time employment opportunities. We really do exemplify our mission throughout our day-to-day work. And here's just a few pictures of some of what we experience as an organization, everything from our food trucks that are on site to the summer, to our drive for back to school, or whether we're all participating in the CDPHP, which is a healthcare provider's workforce challenge, where other companies and organizations and other state agencies or public state entities will come together and put teams together, and they'll run or walk a little over a 5K. So this just gives you an idea of some of the events that we have, and including the picture right in the center or really more towards the middle. That's our executive director, Tom Lee, and he's also serves as our chief investment officer, and he's with two of our employees as part of our employee recognition program. So we certainly live our values. So where are we located? So given that the students on the call are all based mostly in New York City, we're actually located 2 to 3 hours drive to New York City, Boston, and Montreal. Our average commute in our area is about 23 minutes, which is not bad. We do have access to an international airport, which is about probably less than maybe around 15 minutes or so from where we're physically located. And our geographic region has a mix of all different types of communities, from urban to suburban to rural lifestyles, depending on what's important to you. We're confident you're going to find it in this area. We have 24 different colleges and universities. And in the summer, there's a lot of folks that are doing internships in this area. And I know myself, among other organizations, are looking for ways to connect interns with each other, because it's a lot of fun up here. We have a lot of things to look forward to in the summer. And like I mentioned on the slide here, there's a variety of areas to explore, everything from going up to the Adirondacks and doing a hike, to going up to Montreal, to even checking out some of the music scene in some of our downtown areas like in Schenectady and Troy. There's a lot happening here for sure. So talking about who we serve really briefly, already Christine had mentioned this, but really our employers, so the school districts, the teachers and administrators are those that we service. We have done payments to retirees and beneficiaries just over $8 billion. So we do service quite a bit of money in our organization, and that's really talking about the investment side of the house, of how we're ensuring that we can continue to pay out to our members once they've completed their service in education career. And again, this is just another visual to help you see that most of the revenue that's coming up and sources of income is really composed from how we invest the money that is being brought to our organization. Our members and even the employers they work for only provide a very small contribution. A lot of it represents how we're actually investing. And we do take a conservative approach to our investments, but at the same time, there is a little bit of risk that we do to ensure that we're able to, again, provide our payments to our members. And again, just getting to see a little bit more of over the past 30 years, $140.4 billion in benefit payments have been sent out in the past 30 years. And we're really proud to say that since our inception as an organization, we've never missed a payment. So knowing that is just an important part of our integrity as an organization, but also our resourcefulness with our teams that are here to support that. A little bit about what makes us different as well as an organization is that we actually have a unique reporting structure. We have an executive director and they report to our board of governance. And this board is composed of 10 different members. You can see the makeup on your screen, but it is definitely very different. So those who we service are actually the ones who serve on this board. And we do have other unique members, like a representative of the state comptroller's office, for example, serves here to, again, make sure that we are doing our due diligence as an organization. And I alluded to a little bit about our executive director, Tom Lee, but he's the sixth leader of our organization in our history. And majority of folks have had an extended period of time and tenure with our organization. And we've only had 6 leaders. And Tom himself has been with us already for 17 years and counting. So just knowing how much, how our longevity as a leader, our longevity in our leadership is really important to us as well. I know that's one piece that really attracted me to working for this employer. And fun fact, I think I saw one person in our virtual room that is representing the political science major. Our executive director and chief investment officer, Tom, is a political science alum, and he loves to share that with our folks. I did mention here a bit that our departments, we have 23 different departments. So again, maybe from the outside, folks can easily make determinations of who we hire, but we have such a breadth of opportunity, and career mobility is really important to our organization. I've met folks who've started off in the member relations side, working with our retirees or perhaps our active teachers or the administrators, and then also for folks who have decided to transition from there and maybe they want to go into a completely different area. And that is common here and it is encouraged. We want to make sure that folks feel like they can expand and take their talent within our own organization. So a lot of really great opportunity here for folks. So now I'm going to transition a bit because thinking about our audience and who we're speaking to today, we did want to take an opportunity to highlight our internship program and our postgraduate fellowship program. And some other organizations within New York State have interns. Some may have fellowships or a fellowship-like model, but our organization does. So we run a robust summer internship program that runs from early June to mid-August. And this is actually our cohort from last summer. We had 17 students who joined us in total. Not all folks were represented here. This was when our folks got onboarded in July. We had 4 others that joined us a few weeks after that. And this was their picture. The center one was their first day with our organization. We also hosted a panel with our students, and actually one of our students facilitated it as a way to showcase their talent and what they've gained and learned this summer. But this is a really great opportunity for folks who are early in their career to get some great hands-on experience with a department and in an area of their field that they're interested in, while also getting time to build their social capital, get to network, get to know a really neat area that's not far from New York City, and really give themselves some really neat career options. And I'm going to share a little bit more about our program in the next slide. A couple notes here. I won't read this but to you all, but we had quotes from our students over the summer. Everyone does an exit interview, and it was just a really good way to hear some of the highlights. You know, a lot of our students did comment on the fact that their work felt meaningful and that they weren't just given administrative tasks to do or clerical work, that they actually got to work on really meaningful projects. And this was an example of Elena who really highlighted that in her own conversations with us. And then also one of our interns, Nick, talked about just the inclusive nature of our community, but also the rewarding experience he felt. He was given a lot of tools and opportunities to not only contribute and grow from his end, but he also talked about how he was able to benefit the organization through his work. And I think that just makes us a bit unique. Maybe some other internship programs tend to provide more of an administrative nature to their internship programs, but we really want to make sure that this is a value added for your career. So some highlights and benefits about our program we'd like you to know. It is a full-time internship program, and it is in person here at our organization, but there is the opportunity for folks to participate in a hybrid work schedule, which is great. And we have a flexible work schedule that allows folks to fluctuate their start and end times so that they can accommodate any of their personal needs. Now, I know for some folks who are not from this area, you're probably concerned about housing, and I've talked with students about that. And part of what I love about having a program is the cohort can really come together. We can help them to determine, here's some resources for housing. Here's some other interns who are in the area, so folks can really work with each other on that. We have summer half day Fridays, which are really popular here, and people love to leverage that as well. I love that for the interns because it gives you an opportunity if you're not from here, or maybe you're a student that came to this area, but you never really leveraged the time here, you can enjoy it. We also do career development workshops and trainings for our students based on what they were most interested in. So we were able to host different sessions from learning how to develop a LinkedIn to writing your resume, your cover letters, and even interviewing. And we were able to get our folks professional headshots with our marketing department. Also, networking is huge for us here. We want to make sure that you're not just learning and connecting with people in your department, but that if perhaps you have an inkling of looking at a department you've never considered before, you get an opportunity to ask those folks questions. So we do create intentional opportunities that are super casual, but a way for you to build those connections. We love to get our interns together. And in fact, we actually brought folks together for a fun activity offsite at a local area called Apex. So we brought them bowling and did a bunch of fun activities with them during a workday, which was great. I already talked about the internship showcase, but that's really where we get to highlight our folks. And they got to do a panel-like style in front of our executives, their supervisors, and some senior leadership about what they were able to do and accomplish this past summer. And then as well, during the summer, we have employee-wide events that all of our interns are invited to. So everything from our field day, where our organization divided all employees into teams and we competed for different points for prizes. They got to participate in that, get company swag, and then be able to participate in other events throughout the summer, like going to a minor league baseball game that NYSTRS paid for us to have tickets and food on site, which was awesome. And then last but not least, certainly to say for folks who are interested and have really enjoyed their summer, they're not ready for it to be over, the opportunity to extend may be available to you. So we do have some student interns who actually have extended from the summer, but again, that's contingent on performance and the department's budget. And as long as it's approved, you're able to continue to stay with us. And I will say that if folks are interested in hearing from our summer interns, I'm actually hosting a virtual panel with them on Wednesday at 12:30. So if you'd like to join that and want more information, feel free to send me a note and I'd be happy to send you the information for that. And I do want to acknowledge there are questions in the chat. I promise I will certainly get to them, and I appreciate your patience as we move through the content here. So some qualifications, what you need to know. If you have sophomore standing, junior, or a senior, you are eligible to apply for our internship program. And I should put a caveat here that if you're a graduate student as well, you are also eligible to apply for our internship program. That's a note I have to change on here. We do take both undergrad and graduate students. The only caveat is we need to make sure that you have one more academic semester of study remaining after the internship in your program. If you meet that criteria, then you're good to go to apply. Our program dates are on your screen. Our application process is super simple. We just ask you to submit an updated resume. Cover letters are optional, and we ask you to email them, and we'll put the email in the chat, or if Christine, if you're able to type it in for folks, is fine, at recruitment@nystrs.org is all that you need to do. The only question that we ask for folks to answer for us on their resume is just to include an objective statement that identifies what positions you're most interested in. And and I know I don't have them listed up on the screen, but I'm happy to share them with folks. We have 10 positions we're recruiting for. They're all paid internships and they are $20 an hour. And we're happy to share a little bit more. I might be on the next slide, so I'll take a quick peek. Nope, not yet. But I'm happy to share the flyer with all of you. And if your campus also uses, and I can't remember, I'm pretty sure you use Handshake as well, our company page, we have a link to our posting, and all of our positions are on there, plus bullet points of what the focus of the internship would be. Okay, moving along to our postgraduate fellowship program, this is really a unique opportunity to join our organization after you graduate. This is a 2-year hands-on rotational experience that provides students an opportunity to work right alongside our investment teams. These folks are actually rotating at 6-month intervals, and what they'll do is they'll they'll do their fellowship and rotations in fixed income, public equities, private
Hi, this call
equity.
is from Ms. Christy Jones. This is Liz from Freedom Care. Mr. Andre Timbers provided your information.
Sorry. Oh, there we go. I think somebody had their line up, so apologies for that. So you'll get fixed income, private equities, public equities, and also real estate are the 4 areas that our fellows will be rotating through. And this is, again, what you're seeing on our screen is actually our 4 fellows that are currently started in July with us, 3 of which are graduate students and 1 completed their undergraduate degree. So I've already shared a little bit, but what is a real big highlight of this program is that it's really designed after the traineeship model that Christine had talked about. So once the folks complete their 2-year rotational experience, they've actually obtained all the necessary information that they need to qualify for the Permanent Investment Officer 1 position here at NYSTRS. And just so you know, it is a salaried position with full benefits, just like the rest of our employees. And this is considered a management confidential position. So it means as long as you meet minimum qualifications, you can apply for this program. The salary is up on your screen, so you're welcome to note that. But again, this is a salaried position, and it comes with full benefits as well, which I believe we'll cover in a little bit more in the next slide. So benefits, very similar to our interns that also have access to this, but a little different. Participation in a hybrid work schedule, the flexible schedule, which I talked about, being able to enroll in our medical, dental, and vision. I know for some students, maybe this might not be a priority to you yet, but I'll be very honest, we have a very competitive package when it comes to benefits. So this would be something that you could certainly ask us more about offline. You do accrue paid time off, so you can also accrue both vacation, sick, and personal time. You can choose to enroll in the state pension system if you would like to. And you also get access to our diversity, equity, and inclusion training and their events that are open to all employees in our organization. We also have tuition assistance as well. We have a 75% tuition assistance at the SUNY rate for degrees that you're considering and pursuing. Also, our fellows have the benefit of also having their CFA study time and exam fee paid for through our organization if that's something that you're interested in doing. Half-day Fridays I mentioned, employee events I mentioned, and any of our career development trainings are also an option for folks if they would like to as well. So I thought this was appropriate to say, like, why a fellowship? You know, some folks may not really understand much about what's the concept here or why. Fellowships can really give you access to a professional network that maybe otherwise would take you some time to build. Our fellows are really working hand in hand with folks who've had very robust careers in the private sector and for whatever reason has brought them to do public service work, but with the lens of using that talent from the private sector, but for the public service. And so as a result, they're getting to work alongside these professionals and also get exposure to the stakeholders who are external that otherwise, again, you may not have access to right away. The work is definitely challenged, it's varied, and it does meet a lot of different interests. And folks get the opportunity to get work and travel funded. Some of our fellows have already traveled to New York City with our investment teams and have been a part of some pretty busy days. And they've even been able to go to some of our board meetings as well and be able to sit in, but also contribute their own thoughts and opinions, which has been really a highlight for them so early in the program. And also the fellowship title alone, when someone sees it on a resume, does indicate a level of prestige because not everybody does a fellowship. So think about this as an extended way to really hone in your skills, build your network, start to really put a name for yourself, and leverage this as an opportunity to really accelerate your career. So here's just some basic information. If you are receiving your bachelor's or you're a master's student or recent graduate, you would be eligible to apply for this program. Basically, by December 23 or January 24, you have had to have your degrees completed because we are currently looking to hire for 2 positions in this fellowship program for a start date of January 2024. And if you're graduating in May of 24, we will be recruiting for 2 more fellows to start with us, but with a start date of July. So if you're worried and you're like, oh my God, Yalitza and Christine, I missed the boat, don't worry. We have another round of recruitment. So we welcome your application. If you have analytical skills or quantitative background, it is helpful to you as a candidate, but I wouldn't say it wouldn't hurt you if you haven't had as much experience. So just if you do, we would recommend highlighting that in your materials. And of course, we also look for folks who are just have an interest in investments or maybe considering this as a viable career path. You don't necessarily have had to have an internship to do this program. Could it help you? Of course. But we also understand not everyone has the ability to do one of those as a student. So we're just mindful of that. And lastly, you have to be a US citizen or have authorization to work in the US to be a part of this as well. And I didn't mention, but that also applies for our internship program too. And lastly, like I said, we are hiring for 2 fellows, and I forgot to update this, but our application deadline is November 13th. So when I send the updated slides, I will make a note of that. And all you have to do to apply for this is just to submit an updated resume to recruitment@nys.trs.org. Cover letters are also optional for this program as well. And let me just take a quick peek at the next slide, which is question and answers, which is very fitting. So let me make sure that I take a minute to go through because I know we had a lot of questions here. Let's see. And okay, I'm scrolling. So thank you everyone for your patience. If we're interested in an internship, how can we apply? Are they compensated? Which we did answer, which is great. And Yilang, I saw that you had your hand up. Happy to call you in 1 second. The program doesn't cover housing. I don't think I qualify. My last semester is next semester. Okay, so for folks who may not qualify, because let's say you're graduating in the spring semester, I'm happy to have you connect with Christine and I because there are going to be more full-time opportunities that will be coming along the pipeline that may fit folks' interest. And I didn't put this on the slide, but this is also forthcoming. Our fellowship program started with our investment classes, but we're actually going to be adding to this program so that it's actually a fellowship program across our organization. So there's going to be other rotations that are not specific to our investment classes. So if you're a student who's interested in the fellowship concept, know that there's going to be more positions that are forthcoming. I don't have a time frame yet because this was literally decided like 2 weeks ago. So I'll be working with the staff here to determine what those new positions will be, and we'll be sure to communicate those out to your career folks so that they can share it in case that's something you're interested in learning more about. Let's see here. Any exams are, oh, we already answered that. Can you put the link in the chat? Yep, Christine just did that. Are there any current trainees or courses or any coming soon? Is there a link we can go to apply for a trainee course? So we don't actually have any courses about traineeships, but they are readily available. I mean, I often see traineeships being recruited at other state agencies. Our organization definitely uses it for certain positions. And like I said, our fellowship is actually designed after a traineeship. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on there, Christine, other than what I just said. Oh, you're muted. Sorry. That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
The traineeships use a list to hire from them. So you need to take the exam in order to be eligible to be considered for a traineeship. Do we have traineeships here? Yes, we do. We have an administrative specialist 1. We have a contract management specialist. We have a business systems analyst 1. All of those are traineeships. And so when we post for regular positions, they will be up there, but we do have to use a list to fill those. So I would say if you're interested, someone asked a question if there were positions for psychology majors. The PCO is a great exam for you to sit and take if you're a psychology major, because you just need to have a bachelor's degree, and that's a general degree that kind of your skills and abilities lend you to doing a lot of different things. And there's lots of traineeships that you would be eligible to be considered for within the state. So I would say the next time they give the PCO exam, you should definitely sit for that.
Yeah. And I was also going to say for folks who are psych majors, not to labor on this too much, but as a psych major, I do work in human resources, and I'm actually finishing my master's at an institution in the city that is focused on how to leverage psychology, but for the workplace, it's the industrial organizational psychology side. So if you're interested to chat with me more about that and about that transition, I'm more than happy to talk with folks about it, because it's a different way to use the psych degree than the more traditional, the clinical assessment side of it, or perhaps looking more at academia in that space. So I'm happy to chat with you about that offline if you'd like. I did put my email in the chat there for folks, because I know I saw a couple questions coming up for it. So happy to help answer questions and connect with you separately if you're interested. So I'll let folks continue to see if there's other questions, because I know we're kind of nearing towards the end, but I do want to share again our, public service is a really interesting pathway. And for folks, if we find that a lot of candidates sometimes either stumble upon it because they've met somebody who did it, or maybe they were sent an opportunity and it just wasn't in their purview of options. We hope that today's session gave you some insight into this. There's a lot of content out there available, and our mission is to help people understand this, demystify it truly, and understand how to navigate this. And Christine and I are certainly open to chat with folks as you're considering this pathway. It's certainly very mission driven. It certainly emphasizes the work-life balance that folks are really interested in. And in some ways, this world of work pathway has evolved a lot. So we're also part of this hybrid remote workforce and learning how to adjust to a new normal, like many other employers. So we're hoping to help you navigate a lot of this as you're considering what your options are. And also knowing that NYSTRS is here. I know we're not a local New York City employer. We're a little further up north, but we're not far away. And we'd love to have you consider some of the opportunities with us as well. So certainly reach out to us if you have questions. I'll put our general slide up on the screen so you can see our general contact information. And honestly, one of my favorite shots of our building in the city of Albany. So hopefully you like that. But thank you so much for joining us in today's session. We certainly wish you the best of luck. We know we're nearing towards that latter half of the semester now, where you're maybe hopefully out of the midterm season, or if you just took them, good luck, and you're getting ready for that last push of the end of semester. Happy to connect with folks who are interested in our internship and fellowship programs. Great opportunities to launch your career, and so certainly we can be of the support to you along the way in your journey for your career development. So thank you all to Queens College Career Office, and hopefully we'll get to connect with everybody soon. Take care and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Christine, for this wonderful presentation.
Thanks, Eleanor. Have a great day.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.